Mi gente, welcome. Hello. This is Kica's Corner. My name is Kica Matos, and I'm your host. On this show, we talk about our community, our city, and the world, but always, we always do it through a social justice lens. Let's get started. During my last show, just a month ago, we talked about policing in New Haven. We looked at the history of community policing in the city, and we mourned its death. We talked about the need for a national search for a new police chief, and we sought opinions from our two guests, Professor Tracy Mears, who's a national expert on policing, and Alder-elect Shafiq Abdusabur, a retired NHPD policing sergeant. Today, we're going to pick up where we left off to look again at community policing in New Haven, but this time we're going to look at it from the lens of the immigrant community in New Haven. Let me do, as is my usual, a little bit of framing before we have a conversation with our guest today. New Haven, as we all know, was once on the cutting edge of policing. This also applied to policing and community relations with the immigrant community, especially and including the undocumented community. In 2006, under the leadership of then Chief Francisco Ortiz, New Haven was the second city in the nation to pass a police executive order that banned police from asking anybody about their immigration status in the regular course of policing. A year later, New Haven was the first city in the nation to create citywide resident identification cards. The initiative at the time got strong support from the leadership of the New Haven Police Department, which recognized that the initiative would strengthen the relationship between the immigrant community and the police. That was then. Let's fast forward to 2021. And what we have today is a radically different kind of relationship between the immigrant community and the police. And sadly, not in a good way. Let me mention just two recent incidents. The first is reports of a New Haven police officer pressuring an undocumented woman to have sex with him after she sought help from the police department. The second, which we'll hear more in detail today, is the lack of response from the NHPD after immigrant youth were attacked in Fairhaven and reached out to the New Haven Police Department for help. In the studio with me today is Jairo Lugo, who is a leader in the immigrant rights movement, both in New Haven and around the nation. He is the founder of the grassroots organization Unidad Latina en Acción, better known as ULA. John was at the table back in 2005, 2004, 2003, working to create a community policing model that included the immigrant rights community. John, bienvenido and welcome to the show.
Thank you for your invitation, for being part of your show today.
John, let's take a trip down memory lane. You and I did some work beginning in about 2003 to strengthen the relationship between the immigrant community and the police. Talk to us a little bit about what things were like then, and I would ask you to think about two particular questions: the kinds of problems that the immigrant community faced at the time and what the relationship was like with the police department.
But I believe that we started a conversation with you when you were the director of Junta, and I think one of the issues that were affecting the immigrant community in that time was the racial profiling from the police department in Haven, and also a few incidents where, like, the police, they were responding to the call from the immigrant community, and when they found out that the immigrants, they didn't have documents, they made the threats to call immigration on them. That's how we ended talking to Francis to pass the general order in 2006. That's how we ended also creating the ID card after several people, they were killed in New Haven, including this Santiago, this friend Santiago, who was killed at the corner of Ferry Street and Lombard Street, So the situation was really scary in that time. The people, they were scared about the criminality, but also the people, they were really scared about the response from the police department. So that's how we ended like having all these conversations with the police department. And we were very grateful in that time for Francisco Ortiz and Luis Casanova to be open to work with our community and to create like this really, really good model of community policing, which is like not what we have right now.
Yeah, one of the things that we did at the time, if I remember correctly, was have a series of police dialogues at the Santa Rosa de Lima church.
Oh, yeah. Remember.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit about those, why they happened and what the outcome of the dialogues were.
Yeah, I remember that we invited the police department to have the dialogues at the basement of the Santa Rosa de Lima church. And we ended up having like 300 people there at least, people who were really worried about what's going on in the community. And the dialogue was very like fruitful, like people, they were complaining about the response from the police department. The people, they were like complaining about like particular police officers. And I believe like, again, like Cis Cortez and Luis Casanova and the other police officers who were on the table, they were really open like to continue these conversations. And that's how we ended like having like a direct, relationship with the police department, having, like if we have any incident, I can call directly like to Francisco, to the chief of police and complain about particular issues, So that was like that was the beginning of like a fruitful relationship at that time,
And I talked earlier about this police executive order that was passed in 2006 that banned the police from asking anybody about their immigration status as they were investigating or responding to calls from the community. Do you think that made a difference?
Oh, yeah, that make a big difference. And I don't know if you remember how we ended like having that general order, how the incident that really like pushed to have that general order to be in place, but that happened after like a family called the police after the landlord entered the apartment of this family and they removed the refrigerator and cut the electricity from them. When the police showed up, they were ready to arrest the landlord and arrest the landlord and to press charges on this person. And eventually, when the landlord told the police officer that this family they didn't have any documents, immediately the police officer said that he was going to call immigration. He was not going to arrest this landlord, and he was giving like this family 24 hours to leave the apartment. So this family lived in panic, and we ended like having we call immediately like Cis Cortez, and he ended sending like Luis Casanova to Texas to check on this general order that was like in place in Austin, Texas. So it makes a big difference because when we announced like the incident that really triggered like that, the creation of this policy, like that give a big relief to our community.
You already talked about ways that the immigrant community and the New Haven Police Department at the time were working collaboratively to develop a relationship. You talked about the importance of the leadership from Cisco Ortiz, the then chief of police, and Luke Casanova, who was the district manager of Fairhaven at the time. You talked about the police executive, the general order. What else? You talked about the dialogue between the immigrant community and the police. What other things would you mention that that we put in place to make the relationship stronger? Is there anything else that comes to mind when you think about the things that we did back then?
But I think that it was like, I think there was the you called me on that. It's a long time ago. But I remember like people, they were really like scared about like the racial profiling, people being stopped just because they look like an immigrant. The people being like a threat with immigration, the people being detained several days in the detention center because they don't have an ID, just because they didn't speak the language. That was another issue. Like the idea to like the 9/11, that we still have the same problem this day, that people call the 9/11, and it's really hard to really find somebody who respond to answer the call in Spanish. The problem with the police, having more police officers who speak our language, and not just the Latino police officer who doesn't speak the Spanish, but having a real police officer who really like understand our culture. That was another issue that we were discussing in that time. And also like people being targeted by the criminals in our community. I remember like they used to call our community members like the walking ATMs, because if they detain like somebody, or if a criminal assault an immigrant, is they for sure these people, they were carrying their savings and their package, so that was another issue that really like people, they were talking about it. And yeah, it's so many things, and in relation to the police, I think we came from this culture in Latin America where we're scared of the police. We're scared about them because they take advantage of our community. We crossed the border, and we found out that we spending the similar situations in a different manner, but it's like pretty close to what we experience in our countries.
Yeah, the other two things that come to mind that we did some organizing around. I remember at the time, if I'm not mistaken, particularly the Yale police, but also the NHPD was pulling over drivers. And this goes back to your comment about racial profiling. They would pull over people who looked Latino and would ask them for their driver's license. And when foreign IDs were presented, or foreign driver's licenses were presented, they were confiscated on the spot, and caused a lot of desperation for immigrants, some of whom only had that as a form of ID. And I remember that we had dialogues between police officers and some of the people who had their IDs confiscated. And I also remember that we did some organizing and educating, particularly through the ESL classes, to talk about how things were different in policing in the US, in New Haven, as opposed to people's experiences in their home countries. And we often sought out the New Haven Police Department to come and talk during those classes with immigrants about how different community policing was and is, and the responsibilities of police officers in the city. John, I want to fast forward to today. How would you describe the relationship between the immigrant community and the New Haven Police Department?
I think, living in New Haven for so many years, I have been in New Haven since 1991. I feel this year or the last 2 years has been one of the worst relationship that we have with the police department. We were having like some hope with Chief Reyes, because he was willing to talk to the community, especially after like the mobilizations, for the Black Lives Matter, and after George Floyd got killed, and he was willing to sit with, I remember when George Floyd was killed, I went with Barbara Fair and CJ and several people in front of the steps of the police department, making, demonstration in support of the investigation of what happened to George. And I remember like the police chief came out and he talked to us and he talked to Barbara, and he said that he was willing to talk to the rest of the community. Eventually, those massive mobilizations happened in the city of New Haven, and he was also willing to come out and say something, But then, he retired and everything changed, I don't know who took over, like, I guess Chief Dominguez is the one who came to take over, like, the police department. But that initial idea to continue the conversation with the community disappeared completely. And we start seeing like less Latino police officers, or less Latino police officers as a leaders of the police department, and we start seeing like all these like crimes and all these like killings that they are happening in the city of New Haven. And I don't know, like I have my own theories, but I think after the massive mobilizations of the people on the streets on 2020, and after like the Apple responsibility, the Police Responsibility Act that passed at the state level, my feeling is like after that the police officers they decide to not do anything, just let things happening on the streets, not do more intelligence about like all these criminals, targeting other people in the community, and they just let this killing happen in the city of New Haven. That's why we had like 25 people dead in our city, and basically we had like maybe 2 members of Unidad Latina who got killed, and until today the police has not been doing anything about it. At the same time, we had like a Yale student who got killed, and the same day and the next day there was several press conferences, and there was like all these like results about the investigation and finding out like who killed this person. But what about the rest of the people? What about the townies, the people who really live in the city and contribute in the city and suffer in the city? Nothing is happening about them, and the immigrant community, like they keep complaining that we like when we call the police they never responding, and we had like several examples about those cases, and last night I just got a case from somebody who just got evicted by the police, which is against the law of the eviction process in New Haven. But the police officers, they showed up in the house of this person without LCR or without like the proper the proper process. And we want to document. We're going to be documented this case today. Maybe tomorrow we're going to be saying something or doing something, or maybe a press conference.
Is there any relationship today between the immigrant community and the police department, at least through Unidad Latina en Acción or other leaders in the immigrant community that you know of?
No, nothing. I think all our friends inside of the police department, they have been disappeared. We don't have any connections with the department. It's just like this entity that really is really separated from our community. So, again, in the past, we had like the telephones from some particular, chiefs or like administrators from inside of the police department. But right now is like that is not there anymore. I remember in times when we had like some issues with the community, we used to go over there and enter and meet with the police chief, the third, I think at the 3rd floor of the police department. But that bridge is not there anymore, So I don't know what is going to happen today, but we need to figure out how the administration of New Haven, they should be more open to really like start clearing that bridge again, because that bridge is not there anymore, And I don't see it like from Eliker, like Mayor Eliker is like, he keep pursuing that he wants to keep like Chief Dominguez as the interim police chief, knowing that nobody likes her. There is like a popular movement that really talked to the majority of the elders, saying that she is like a bad leader, and we should find somebody else to take over that position.
John, talk to us. And an example of that recently was an incident that happened in my neighborhood in Fairhaven that ULA intervened in when some young immigrants were beat up and the police didn't respond. Talk to us a little bit about what actually happened that day.
So like 3 weeks ago on Sunday, we got an emergency call from like this family saying that one of their kids got assaulted by several other people on the streets on Blashley Avenue, at the corner of Blashley Avenue and Salton Sol. we went there and we saw one of our members, this kid who came to our organization when he was like 9 years old. Now he's like 17, and he was bleeding from his mouth. I spoke with the mother, and the mother said, yeah, we saw everything, and we know where these people, they are like hiding. So they were like the people who assault this kid. They were hiding in this house on Wilco Street, and we called the police. That was around 1 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, we're still waiting, for like an hour. The police never showed up. So because that was very cold that day, so we decided to enter the cars, two particular cars, waiting for the police to show up. And eventually, the people who assault these kids, eventually they feel so empowered to, and they were like maybe making jokes about us, that because, that we were there waiting for the police, that eventually they came out as a large numbers of people, and they surround our cars, saying that they were going to assault us again. So we called the police in that moment, that was around like 2 o'clock. We called an emergency basis and say, listen, we're going to get assaulted. We have videos, we have like pictures, and these people, they are like really making a lot of threats, And they say, yeah, we're going to send the police officers, and they never showed up. They showed up 1 hour later. And 1 hour later, they showed up in the house of the people who tried to assault us. The people who assault the kids, they showed up in their house. And eventually, after talking to them, they came to us, and they started accusing our kids to be liars and to be the ones who provoked this incident. And we say, listen, we have been waiting here. We're the ones we made several phone calls, and the police never respond, So all these hours, and now you're going to come in, and after the kids accusing them, they are the liars, and they are like they are the ones who provoked the incident. And that just demonstrates that there is like this big separation between the police officers or the police department and our community. They don't understand our culture. I still feel like, going back to the conversations that we have in 2004 and 2005, that this language barrier is still there. The people, they don't understand the culture. The people, they don't understand the people who speak broken English, or they're coming from another culture. So we're very frustrated. And on Sunday, we have another lady who is suffering from like domestic violence. We advised her to call the police, because like she was working, and the husband, her ex-husband, came to the house, and he was drunk, and he was like making all these threats to the kids. She called the police, and the police never showed up. That was on Saturday. The police showed up, and she made the calls around 8 p.m. on Saturday, this past Saturday, and the police showed up on Sunday at 11 in the morning, when the guy was not there anymore. So that's something that is happening all the time, and that's why we're in the process to start documenting all these cases, because we want to we want to force the city to start having a conversation with our community, because I think it's time to really start having those meetings that we had back in those days, when we brought the community together, and when we forced we asked the police department to be with us, and we need those meetings again.
John, Unidad Latina en Acción was one of the organizations that recently was pushing for Mayor Ellicott to conduct a national search for a new police chief. And the Board of Alders voted in favor of a national search. What do you and members of Unidad Latina en Acción want to see in a new police chief?
Well, we want to see a police chief that really cares about the diversity of this community. I want a police department who really cares about, not just about the Yale students and the Yale institution, but cares about every community in the city of New Haven. And that's the kind of person that we need. And we need like another Cis Cortez, and that has to be a Latino. can be like anybody else, but somebody who really demonstrate that they in the past they have been like doing like a good job for wherever they came from, building bridges among the communities who are represented in this very diverse city as New Haven. That's the kind of people that's the kind of person we need. But again, I think the problem is like one problem is the police department. Another problem is this administration. Justin Elliker, is they just received all this federal money, to support the city of New Haven, and they just decide to spend all the money in more like a surveillance
cameras. Yeah,
it's surveillance and that is affecting. Hello. Oh,
yeah, okay. I can hear you. Keep going.
It's a surveillance that I'm sorry. It's a surveillance that is like it's going to be not for like every neighborhood. It's going to be mostly like for 4 neighborhoods in New Haven, and that's something that this approval of the like to buy like 500 cameras to keep poor people under like the surveillance. I think that's not the answer for the problems that we have in our city. So this administration they need to understand that they need to start investing more money to like end the poverty in our city and the homelessness and all the issues that they are happening affecting our community, and not just like doing more policing. One thing is like hiring more police officers doesn't demonstrate that it's going to make the city safe. Combating poverty, giving more opportunities to people who are facing homelessness, I think is a better answer than like investing the money in something that they're going to be wasting their money.
Thank you for that, John. We're coming to the end of the show, and as is my practice, we're going to get a little bit personal, so don't hang up on me yet. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. John, if you could spend a weekend with anyone in the world, living or dead, who would it be and why?
You asked me that question before.
Go ahead. You get another chance to answer it.
Okay, so I have to change somebody else. I don't know, like. So the question is?
If you could spend a weekend with anyone living or dead, who would it be and why?
I always say that, actually I'm going to change. There is like several, lately I have been like trying to defend the migrant rights, but also like our indigenous roots, and there is like several leaders in Latin America, like Berta Cáceres, who was killed, for defending the rights of the indigenous people in Honduras. And I would love to, let's have somebody I would love to spend some time with her or maybe her family in the future, because I think we need to start defending the rights of the indigenous people and the rights to be in this land, and basically like defending the rights to be in this continent and not be divided by borders.
Yeah. Who or what is your source of inspiration?
My inspiration, there are many people. And inspiration is like, I don't know, at this moment is my inspiration is the young people, for example, in Chile, who really forced this really right-wing government to really change their ways. And right now they're electing somebody who is not close to the past administration, who were really close to the dictatorship of Pinochet. So the young people in Latin America, they are demonstrating that they are leading this movement of change in our country. So that's my big inspiration these days.
Yeah, the Chilean president is millennial, 35 years old, very progressive guy. Folks, that brings us to the end of our show. Thank you for listening. John Jairo Lugo, mil gracias, and thank you for being on the show. Happy holidays to everybody. Until the next one, here is wishing you justice and many, many days of sunshine.
do la menti be. Ye for some money, manyo bae. We la canina for some money, manyo bae. When you full of musulangaluye, Madame Musulangalu, ye femina de Pasila. When you full